We've got an exciting guest for you today. Matt Wurst is one of my road warrior friends. We were hanging out at South by Southwest. He's a fellow podcaster. We've been trying to get him on the show for a bit, so we're excited to be able to do this with you today. Matt is an award-winning digital marketing executive, brand strategist, and the chief marketing officer of Genuin, a leading video-first community platform with over 20 years of experience navigating the front lines of digital attention. Matt specializes in helping brands build deep own relationships with their audiences rather than relying on fickle algorithm-driven social media giants. Before joining Genuin, Matt built an incredibly diverse leadership resume. He co-founded and served as CMO of Web3 tech platform Mint. He spearheaded the first ever social media practice at the agency 360i, where he managed digital strategy for global titans like Coca-Cola and Oreo, and pioneered early digital content and fan engagement strategies for the NBA. Known for his strategic clarity and no-hype approach to emerging tech, Matt is an advisor to multiple early-stage startups and a frequent speaker on the topic of consumer engagement. Matt, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Of course.
Spending some time.
This is super exciting. You said no hype. You did all the hype for me. So,
I'm your hype man. Let's go.
I feel extremely humbled. And frankly, my ego is already way too big for this podcast. So I don't know how we're going to handle it, but we'll do our best to forge through.
It'll be a tough one. All right. Well, I know I just talked through your resume a little bit, but why don't you give us a little bit of background? So where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And how'd you land in the early days of social agency?
Yeah, I'm a native New Yorker, but I grew up just on the outskirts of the city in the suburbs of Long Island, where I've since returned. I joke that everyone on Long Island lives within 50 minutes of each other and everyone kind of knows each other. And that early networking experience that I had, whether it was through travel sports or high school clubs, that really sowed the seed in me to just be someone who was out and connecting with others. And by the time I got to college, I felt like I knew so many people from the New York area and even beyond because of what I did. I went to school in Philly and then came back to New York very quickly. I loved Philly, but as a New York sports guy, I couldn't spend too much time listening to their sports talk radio. So made my way back to New York. I started early in sports, right? I'm a sports guy, as I said, and sports is very much a crucible for so much of what happens in society, good and bad, right? Our passions really bleed out of us in terms of our loyalties and our rivalries, but the way that we connect with others, whether it's fans in the stadium or in the early days of digital online on message boards, that really stoked my fire, right? I love creating content. Sometimes it was for free. And I got my first real job in marketing and content at the NBA because I was writing a sports blog before that was even a thing.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that story of like somehow, passion project can kind of just lead you into such an amazing role like that.
Yeah, and it's continued to be an outlet sometimes, whether it's for creativity or even just therapy, especially as a New York sports fan. But I find that the most innovative and oftentimes leading edge innovation technology or applications of things at the convergence of marketing and content and creativity and technology, like that happens in sports. So I'm glad I got my start there. I joke I didn't get my MBA, but I got my NBA because that really was a trial by fire in terms of teaching everything, soup to nuts, about how we interact as a professional organization, employees, and emerging leaders.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sports is probably one of the most engaging cultures, engaging content arenas these days, probably because it's the only thing left that's driving any kind of live viewership or tune in. Sports is the last thing that people watch as a community together all in the moment because they don't want to, wake up the next morning, pull up their Instagram feed and then get the spoiler alert, or they don't want their buddies to be hitting them up in their, text chains as the plays are happening in real time.
Yeah, you got to keep up.
Yeah, you really, if you're not tuning in live, you can't kind of.
I just saw that I think 97 of the top 100 most viewed events, I think, on linear TV in the last year were all sports related.
Totally
So
makes sense.
that's
Yeah,
it.
maybe the award shows get a little
Those
bit
are
of
the other
play,
three,
but
right?
yeah,
Oscars,
right.
Emmys, and Grammys or Tonys. So there you go.
Yep. I'd be curious on your take. Also, the emergence of online gambling becoming easier, less frictionless, more less of a stigma, but also this phenomenon around kind of like micro betting. People wagering small amounts of money on long odds
Yes.
for
I just paid
every
$10 because
possible
I knew
thing.
you were. I bet that you were going to ask me this question. I went on Kalshi and I totally predicted it.
Let's go.
I have mixed feelings because I grew up. I mean, I've been running an NCAA tournament pool for 32 years since my sophomore year of high
Wow.
school.
Wow.
So I both appreciate and enjoy and fully throw myself into that. I mean, I do multiple fantasy football leagues. I've done every sport. I'm in an incredible fantasy league called League of Leagues, which is like 28 sports and runs for a full year. And it's for the most
So you're all
degenerate.
in.
I'm watching like women's college volleyball, Pac-10, San Diego State. And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But from a professional perspective, I do think that the legitimacy that the NBA and NFL gave was both critical for survival because so much money was bet literally, but also invested in and then potentially lost for the leagues that didn't begin to take ownership over it or at least figure out how to participate in the monetization of it. So I get why they did it, but I feel like it's also had a negative impact. We're seeing some of the things that are coming out of the NBA and college sports now with athletes and even coaches who are involved in some things that they should not be involved in from a legality perspective. But the growth of gaming has sparked both new interest, healthy and unhealthy, just like any new innovation does, right? It's going to be good and bad. It's how it's set up, how it's governed and enforced, and then ultimately how it's optimized. I think the jury is still out on whether it's a positive long-term effect, but it's not great watching a baseball game or a basketball game and the announcers dropping, in line, in kind, like actual odds of, oh, the third quarter now is underway. And, the odds are, or the betting line says that this person's going to get 14 points, or the baseball game will tell you that someone is, minus 180 to get a hit.
So do you think there's maybe too much focus on it? It's kind of interrupting the experience with,
they have no choice.
These
the advertising angle of it requires that those live reads happen because FanDuel and DraftKings and all the others are paying premiums for that mention. So I try not to let it distract me, but I've been able to bifurcate me as a fan participating in sports and someone who is not overly pressured into being a gamer. The micro betting is kind of crazy though. Now you see what happens even at like a government level, if they can rig the odds or create markets, that that is significantly problematic. So we have to rein some of those things in, but
in the government side, the Kalshis and the poly markets, a lot of people are looking to those places as a more reliable predictor of polling and what's going to happen with candidates and stuff like that.
As long as you knew the sample size, like investor better strategy predictors are, right? Like, is it really an indicator of who's going to vote for whom, or is it just this group of people who are more inclined to bet in a certain way?
That's a good point. I think about on the sports side, there's definitely an engagement level. Like I know, if I'm actually the opposite. I'm not a big sports fan. I can kind of drop into a game and have a good time, take a client to a baseball game and enjoy it, but I don't really follow any leagues or any teams religiously or even passively, honest in full transparency. But I do notice, like, if I throw $10 on a game, I'm as engaged as I would have been on the Super Bowl, the one day of the year that I actually tune into live sports. But do you feel like there's an engagement level that increases when somebody has skin in the game, so to speak?
Definitely an engagement level. I mean, it's an emotional commitment, right? And there's a financial reason for it. Sometimes it's just the adrenaline or the endorphins that come along with creating competition, right? I have favorite teams, but even when I am involved in fantasy sports or the few times where I do bet, I am far more emotionally invested than I would have even been. The problem for me as a sports fan is when I'm kind of emotionally and financially hedging against myself. I root for this
Mm.
team, but I'm going up against this player on fantasy. How do I reconcile that? And it creates some inner turmoil that I have not fully resolved right with myself all these decades later.
I love it. All right. So then you went over to 360i after the NBA.
Yeah, there was a brief stint of my first startup where a company called WePlay, we were building the first youth sports social network. This is
Mm.
like 2008, 2009, right when Facebook was just becoming a real community powerhouse before it became a marketing engine. But the youth sports angle, we had pro athletes invest, LeBron James, Peyton Manning, Derek Jeter. So there was a content component and a utility component. But as we in digital were finding our footing and really beginning to build this ecosystem out, again, talk about government involvement for good and for bad, right? The involvement of the government in terms of setting rules and laws about how kids under 13 could be marketed to or what PII, right? Identifiable
Yeah,
information could
Copa.
be obtained. Right. So that began to impact us. And we were doing nothing nefarious, I promise. But it began to pivot to a point where we could really only focus on the utility, even though the community aspect of it, that bug is what hooked me. So
Mm.
I got the connection, community, content, conversation itch that I couldn't really fulfill on the platform side yet because many of them were way too nascent. So joining an agency made a lot of sense at a time where I was like, you know what? If we build these platforms into communities for brands and for consumers, this is where the opportunity lies for real connection, long-term loyalty, and true emotional connection relationships that didn't exist, that used to be one way. TV, radio, and even websites were very much audience centric.
Hmm.
Now, with the rise of social, and why I joined and helped build this big sort of Web 2.0 social media powerhouse at 360i, it was for that multi-directional conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's where brands no longer were, communicating outwardly only. They had their audiences, their consumers got a say, so to speak. They got to voice publicly how they felt about them and the things that they did in the world. And when they released products that they liked or didn't, or when they made you miss a flight in an airport and couldn't get you rebooked on the flight as fast as you wanted to. Now you had a kind of a customer service channel and engagement platform and, all sorts of different components
All of the
built
above,
into
and
these social networks.
each brand had a different strategy for how they engaged, where they engaged, and even beyond just match luggage of doing the same thing on every platform, right? Twitter could be a customer service tool, but Facebook became a community building engine and YouTube became a broadcast channel, right? There were different approaches, and that creativity, that strategy really required that we think more deeply. At the same time, the platforms also wisened up and realized, wow, we can make a lot of money here. And that tension continues to this day, but you see the balance, unfortunately, shifting towards the monetization and data ownership and walled garden challenge that I think we're all aware of, and some are doing more than others to either combat or fix or maybe just go along with.
You were building digital strategies for brands like Oreo. I know we've already talked about your sports enthusiasm. Were you there for the infamous Oreo dunk in the dark moment?
That was my team.
Let's
I would
go.
say at least once a week, someone asks me about it. And it's been like 12, 13 years at this point, which tells you how impactful that moment really was. But I always say, yes, it created the concept of real time marketing, but more pervasively than in actuality, because we'd been doing that type of work as an agency with Oreo and other partners for a long time. The only
Yeah,
difference was
maybe it
there
was
was a
just the
war room.
scale, the war
It
room
was
and the
this, it was,
scale, the Super
yeah, at
Bowl
the Super.
moment.
But I'll tell you something really interesting. That moment would not have really been the moment it was had the PR and even traditional marketing engine not spun into effect, right? 20
Interesting.
minutes after the lights went out and that tweet went out, the CEO of our agency and Oreo's PR team were actually blitzing mainstream media, being like, look what just happened. Look at this moment. And it went from what would have probably been, a couple million, tens of millions of impressions to like billions of impressions. Because the next morning, the story on the cover of the New York Times was not about the football game or even the lights going out. There was a story about how Oreo won the Super Bowl by posting a tweet in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, these moments can kind of come and go if you don't have an operationalized process behind it to actually,
There you
make
go.
it resonate larger in culture through PR and, paid and kind of all the other
I
levers
don't
you
think
can
that could
pull.
happen again, by the way, at
Yeah.
least not in social media, because of the pay to play algorithmic requirements that need to be both adhered to on the platform side and understood and maybe gamified if you're a brand or you're a creator. Every once in a while, a moment will happen that transcends, but it would have happened anyway. It's not happening because social media makes it happen.
Do you think because we're moving to the social platforms, all kind of adopting the TikTok algorithm, the algorithm gets a vote, the idea that your followers don't really matter anymore, a brand or a consumer, anybody has that opportunity to go viral because the algorithm now rewards engagement and watch time and some of these things that aren't necessarily tied to follower account? Do you think we're coming back to a world where kind of that in moment marketing matters and whoever gets the thing up first wins? And if you catch the algorithm, you do still have that ability to kind of,
It's
you
outside your
know,
control, though. I think,
yeah, that's true.
again,
It's
it might be lightning in a bottle. You might get lucky, but it's going to be lucky. You are
mhm.
not, as a brand or a marketer, in control when you over rely and over index on social platforms. I've been saying it for a couple of years now, but the push pull dynamic needs to shift, because if you're hoping, praying, and even trying to orchestrate that moment, it's not going to happen. You have a far greater likelihood of creating something within your owned and operated channels and using social to help reach or target than the opposite happening. It's just a fact of life now.
Mm, that's interesting. So, when did you get the itch for Web3? What got you excited about that technology and what was meant?
So it's funny because after I left the NBA, I was still here and there involved in sports, but I also remained very interested in and connected to leading edge technology, right? Whether it was new social platforms, whether it was, um, even the early days of blockchain. Mint was one of the first commercial blockchain based companies for brands to help them navigate. And as the
Mm,
NFT market started to really accelerate and take off, I had both a front row seat and a leading driver's seat in that whole moment. And I'm not going to pretend that it wasn't messy. A lot of really smart people made bad calls, including some of us inside the tent. The reckoning was earned, but there was a fundamental interest in blockchain and the opportunity to capitalize on this new technology that a lot of brands really jumped into. And I think the lesson that I carry from that era is the same lesson every technology cycle teaches. And that's, you know, the tech is the answer, right? The relationship ultimately, though, is what is most powerful. Anyone selling you the tech as the end is renting you a bag of magic beans, right? We're past the hype phase. We're now in the utility phase of blockchain, and I'm not still, very involved in that, but it's a quieter, more again practical element that I got the bug because I just saw really interesting, innovative use cases, and then as that cash grab became something that everyone wanted to be part of, I happen to be in a place where we could make that happen, but not. I don't think we took advantage of anybody. I don't feel bad about it. It just, the moment came and the moment went.
Yeah.
And it opened up other doors, and it taught me some things about entrepreneurship that I carry with me to this day.
Hype cycles are kind of a, unavoidable cycle, I think, of the business that we're in, of marketing and technology. We had NFTs and Web3, and then, like you said, it kind of quietly goes away. But then the people who are building and using the technology for real applications and purposes continue on. Metaverse.
I called it recently privately to someone who I hadn't seen in a while, who asked if I was still doing it. I was like, it's kind of like the spring training for AI, because all the people who got super interested in NFTs and Web3 are now leading the way in many cases with AI technology. So
Interesting.
I don't, you strike out and you have an offer in spring training. We're going back to sports references here. Sorry. But, it's kind of like, we got to feel like things moving quickly. How do you adapt? How do you build processes? How do you understand where the innovation can be applicable? Who are the right partners? How do you vet out and suss out the shady characters? And, now we're kind of getting it right.
So, you mentioned we were talking about the hype cycle of Web3. Metaverse was another big one that kind of felt like it came and went, but AI seems entirely different. But do you still think does AI resemble, prior hype cycles or bubbles? Or do you think AI is different in some way?
I think there are similarities and there are differences, right? I feel like I'm writing a, social studies paper in 9th grade. Each scenario has similarities and differences. And now let me follow up with behind that topic sentence. I feel like I've seen this movie before in certain ways. A new platform shows up, it captures everyone's imagination. Maybe it's a technology, maybe it's a solution, maybe it's something white label. And brands, marketers will kind of panic. They reorganize a strategy around being inside that platform. We got to have a Facebook page. We got to have a YouTube strategy, because the fear of missing out is louder than the fear of actually building something real. And the problem with that is when you race to embed your brand now inside of an LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini. Yes, I use Claude for a lot of things, and I'm using it for learning code again and for streamlining efficiencies. But as a brand, right, if you're using Google or Gemini, you're doing exactly what you did on Instagram and TikTok. You're renting space inside someone else's algorithm in social cases. But now these LLMs are the new walled gardens. You're a tenant, and tenants get evicted when the landlord changes the rules. And I think that's an important thing to remember. If I'm giving you all my data about my brand or about my company and asking you to help me with it, yes, you can create some walls that protect you, but do you really know how much that's working? We just lived through this with social. The scars are fresh for me, right? AI platforms are going to be somewhat the same story for public and LLM based technologies. So my issue is, like the reflex to chase distribution inside someone else's infrastructure is not where I'm leaning. The goal should be building your own. This was what I learned and why we're building Genuin now. The brands that win this cycle are the ones who use AI to deepen their own environments and build their own solutions and maybe leverage some third party or partner technology, but really keep the devil and the devil you don't know inside your own house, right? Your site, your app, your network, not the ones renting square footage inside ChatGPT. Because in that case, I will just say, having seen this before, distraction, if you're a CMO, looks like activity. Ownership looks like progress, and we cannot confuse them.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so I think that's a good segue. So, what is Genuine? What was the insight that led you to start the company? What was the problem that you saw in the marketplace that got you excited to be an entrepreneur again?
So yeah, I'm going to give credit to the CEO and founder Bhargav built a very successful DSP, understands the ad tech world, the media marketing and technology space as well as anybody, and knew also how to build a company, and still is involved in that company, but pivoted his focus and expanded his focus at the same time that I was getting out of my Web3 and consulting phase. And we kind of arrived at this conclusion together. He was building what was initially going to be another social platform. And as we were talking, we realized the opportunity was to create more of this white label solution that could live as an infrastructure and an experience infrastructure rooted in video, right? Everyone is engaged with vertical video. I think like 80% of all content consumed right now online is vertical video. You might even be watching a clip of this right now as vertical video.
Yeah, we have four of the 6 streams that are going out right now are in vertical.
So I will make sure that I stay slim. I'm glad I didn't wear horizontal stripes. But Genuin is the result of that sort of inflection point between brand security, consumer mistrust in some of the social, like what's real, what's not. Same with AI content. And now to put, if you're a publisher or an entertainment or a news network or consumer service or commerce or retail media brand, any of those who need to own their destination and reclaim it back from social and reclaim it from AI, we give them the infrastructure to build and own their own experience with their consumers through video, their content, partner content, creator content, user-generated content. But now, with every partner in our ecosystem operating as like a node in the same network, we've created this expansive yet very brand safe, curated experience for the consumer to spend more time in an app. And oh yeah, it's all shoppable if you want it to be. And you can link out or link into content that you want people to discover. And we're doing this with TED and iHeart and Us Weekly and news sites and for delivery apps, all of whom are rethinking their funnel experience with consumers, right? What does discovery mean? What is conversion? It's not linear, but it's still kind of a funnel. So we tell them, like, you built the audience already. Genuine is how you drive engagement and how you can actually monetize it in a way that boosts your bottom line, both from a conversion perspective and even a commerce, retail, or publisher media model.
Interesting. So, is it like a white label solution where every brand has their own Genuine platform on their site, and then when you land, you can kind of click into a vertical video experience that lives inside of the publisher, brand, influencer's own kind of, it's basically your own vertical video feed.
It could be a feed. It could be a carousel that opens to a feed. It can be inside articles. It can replace your programmatic ad insertion if you want to bring in more engaging content. But also you can monetize it with partners, with sponsors, in a way that, like, I'm more likely to watch a brand's social content that I would see on Instagram or TikTok, but done now, content as demand within a trusted environment. That I'm okay with, right? If I'm on the Sephora app or I'm in the Walmart app and I see video content from those brands, but also from their partners and from their creators, that to me, I know is authentic because the brand is putting their stamp on it.
Yeah, you can kind of trust the source, so to speak.
That's trusted environments. There you go. So our SDK, which is very simple, very lightweight, very elegant, but highly customizable, gives every one of our partners a unique opportunity to rebuild trust, reclaim ownership, but still without sacrificing the brand experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what are some of the initial results? Like, I could see, like you said, for a company like Sephora, gosh, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because Sephora has the squad. They've got, I don't even know, maybe 9,000 creator advocates that are creating videos for them in social, but those videos get repurposed, like you mentioned, as social ads or UGC to fill their owned and operated social media channels. Mm-hmm. But they also are videos on on e-commerce pages, because video helps drive, I think it's like 35%, the product pages with video content drive conversion like 35% better than those that just have pictures or text. So
you just answered your own question then, right? I mean, quantitatively, the results are pretty significant, because you're seeing things like video completion rate, time on site, net new revenue, and monetization opportunities, right? I know this is an ad podcast. We're not an ad platform. We're a monetization platform for our publisher destination, consumer service brand partners. But this creates a more positive outcome depending on what your objectives are, engagement or monetization or both, that didn't exist before. A static product shot or an engaging social or even social pulled video, whether it's brand created or creator created or user generated, is significantly higher in terms of, again, time spent. But I would just say, from a qualitative and experiential perspective, we're learning about real consumer behavior again, right? The intent changes completely when you're surfacing content. But the differentiator here is that each of our brand partners owns their data, right? So it's zero-party data. It's volunteering. It's likes, comments, shares on posts. It's uploads. It's time spent watching certain types of articles and certain types of communities. It's not just a feed. There's also a Reddit-like community taxonomy. So you can organize and cluster content by topics and categories and areas of interest. So the amount of learning and then opportunity to remarket and bring back content experiences to specific consumers in areas where they've raised their hand and said, you know what, I like this, I want more of it. It's redefining that loyalty and LTV cycle, but shortening the time it takes to get feedback and a return on that relationship. And that's the most exciting part, is seeing the content. Sure, like that's fun. Like, the content is always going to be more enjoyable when it's engaging, but the fact that it delivers those results and is, unlocking and protecting brands and publishers and retailers from third-party social walled gardens, and even now the AI hits to traffic, we have the ability to create this contextual continuity across our network that ensures that people will see content that's relevant for them.
Yeah, it feels like almost like a vertical video fast channel idea, where you've got all these fast channels, but it takes a lot of premium content in order to program a 24-hour fast channel. But for things like product discovery, especially, like if you drop into, Uber Eats, I'd much rather, vertically video, flip through a bunch of really delicious looking food videos than read, go through store listing pages on Yelp or Grubhub or going into even like a fashion site or something like that, like an e-tailer, being able to see what different styles look like on people in a vertical feed, rather than just looking at ghost mannequins on a site. Seems like a more interesting way to shop if you can showcase your products in a way that people like to consume content, which is swiping through vertical videos. So we've demonstrated that is how people like to date now, right? With all these apps, it's all about swipe left, swipe right, full frame video.
Shopping for something else then.
Yeah.
Listen, you're right though, because when a consumer is on TikTok or Instagram, their mindset is entertain me, right? They're in scroll mode. They're in escape mode. They're not looking for you. They're not even really looking for anything for the most part. They're probably escaping. And the platform's job is to throw 1,000 things at them and then hope one catches, right? The brand video competes with cats, competes with AI, crazy, movie remakes with people aged up and down in fun ways. Now you flip that, right? If a consumer is on a brand's own app or site, or even we create that offsite extended O&O experience. So you talk about Grubhub or Uber Eats. Imagine a sponsored Grubhub Uber Eats experience inside the iHeart app, whereas people are listening to a podcast, maybe this one, or watching something, they're going to see now lunch suggestions with food videos from Uber Eats or Grubhub's partners, and you can order it right there in the app. That's what we've done.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, man. So is the barrier to entry having a lot of short form video? Like what kind of scale do you need in order to deploy something
By the
like
way,
this?
what brand does not have a lot of short form video
Yeah,
right now? That
that's
is
a
not
good
the
point.
barrier to entry. The
Yeah.
barrier to entry, honestly, is just getting outside of that slowly boiling pot and the realization that you're the frog. Because the longer you stay in social, the longer the acquisition cost is going up. So think of that as the boiling water temperature. But the ROI on that high acquisition cost is not really improving. So the faster you can get out of that boiling pot and build your own kitchen, then you're going to transform things. And that's not a hard sell. Like we're making good progress. It's just to be honest, every company has its own vision for how their content should be engaged with and how they can monetize. So for us, it's really no different than uncovering the strategy again. What are your insights? Who are your consumers? What benefits can you offer? And how do you deliver your message and communicate in a way that drives value for everyone involved, whether it's you, your customer, if you're a retail or commerce media network, and the end consumer?
Yeah, it's interesting. You've also talked a bit about this idea of stopping, renting attention from third party social platforms. Why do you think it's important for brands to own those relationships as these platforms, are constantly changing the rules?
I mean, I think we realize now that when we're not in control, we are playing by somebody else's rules. There's a lot of talk now, and we've been saying it for a while, but we're starting to see the idea of renting an audience versus owning an audience. Media networks, whether they are commerce, entertainment, publisher, retailer, etc., this is the most undertold story in marketing right now. Amazon proved the model. Walmart Connect proved it scales. Now every category with a captive audience and a transactional service is asking the same question. Like, we could do that? And the answer is
Yeah.
yes.
Commerce media networks, basically anybody with data who collects purchases.
And it's, whether it's travel, hospitality, finance, like it's the same story. Loyalty programs have been sitting on gold mine data for 30, 50 years and using it to send you a coupon for free coffee. That's like owning, the diamond from Titanic and using it as a paperweight. Like you're not getting the real value out of it. So what's changing, I think, is two things now. First is, well, they finally understand that loyalty data is media inventory. So you need to own that. You need that visibility. You can't just be hoping and praying that you're going to get some clarity from these walled gardens, because you're not. And the second, and this is, I think, where Genuin comes in, is that really the infrastructure to do this without rebuilding your tech stack from scratch, it finally exists. You don't have to build something. You don't even have to buy something. You can plug video, community, monetization, and orchestration as an AI connector within surfaces you already own. And that, whether it's your app or your loyalty or your e-commerce or whatever tools you've built, like suddenly that airline app that we're like, my points aren't just, they're not working for me, or my booking tool is not working as well as it should, right? That's a media network. And destination partners want to advertise into that. So own it, monetize it, become a profit center, not a cost center.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of these apps are boring, they're utilitarian, but if you add something that's exciting, like a vertical video feed, it gives people a reason to
inspire me. Let me
stick
see
around.
Something. Yeah.
Like why doesn't my Delta app show me cool places that I should be traveling with my points and try and get me to spend my points?
Interesting idea.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, so you've spent a lot of time talking about community. It's definitely become a buzzword, maybe an overused buzzword in marketing. How do you
Ben, I'm
distinguish?
sorry for that because I probably helped make that a cliche. Yeah.
How do you distinguish between a brand that simply has a large passive list of social media followers and a brand that's built a genuine self-sustaining community?
Genuine being the operative word. Ultimately, a community falls into a different category than a broadcast audience experience. And many social channels have created an audience experience that may or may not be enjoyable and have some limited value. But there has to first be quality content that is just like, that's the anchor of everything, whether it comes from a conversation or it comes from a creator or wherever it comes from. The core elements of community and multi-directional dialogue, it's not a monologue anymore. It is a dialogue. It's a multifaceted conversation where the value exchange becomes balanced. I, as a brand, or me as a consumer, or even if it's just like your local community neighborhood, right? There's a value exchange. I'm putting something in and I'm getting something out. So that's collaboration. We are collaborating in a way that ensures the positive synergism. The sum is greater than the individual parts. If we can build that, connection, that collaboration, but do so over a period of time, it's not a campaign, right? All those things could happen in a campaign and then end. No. For it to be a real community, it has to be sustaining. It has to be iterative. So time is the third or fourth dimension that makes community so important, because otherwise it's just, you're a garage sale. You're not a community.
One of the things you mentioned is kind of the proliferation of AI content. It feels like when you open TikTok and a lot of these apps, you're seeing like the same thing, right? Like AI created dance videos, popular sound clips that are reformatted with babies, as the star, like babies talking, basically.
Yes, it'll be like you and me having a baby. Our voices, yeah, it's fun for 5 minutes.
I heard a pot, and Meta, I think, has done a good job of, like, they've got the Meta app where all the AI stuff lives, and trying to move some of the the other stuff, like have like a specific tab for AI generated content. Then you've got, podcasters. A lot of podcasters are complaining right now because CPMs, maybe not CPMs are going down, but inventory is going down because there's like 10,000 AI generated new channels every single day that is just flooding the platform with garbage inventory that maybe gets 2 or 3 or 4 views. But, when you stack those all up, if you can do it at scale many hundreds, if not thousands of time, that adds up to attention. And when you're just creating content for the sake of creating, AI slop and optimizing, to get views, it's creating a trap for creators, or it's creating a competition for creators that are creating real content that people want to engage with. Do you think this maybe helps solve the idea of consumers, especially young consumers, being fatigued with AI content? A lot of kids use AI as a pejorative when it comes to content, especially because oh, that's so AI, that's AI.
Yeah, their BS
almost
radar,
like it's a bad thing.
But their BS radar is significantly better than ours. That's number one. Number two, their tolerance is exceptionally lower. I mean, I'm pretty irritated easily and impatient easily. Maybe that comes with age, but my kids have no patience for it. The difference between generative content and generative experiences is this divide that we now need to cross as a society, because there are tools out there where generative AI for experiences, whether it's creating a website or building something different that you haven't experienced before, that's interesting to me. Generative content is becoming almost, the barrier to making it collapsed. It's zero, which means the barrier to making good content just shot up to the ceiling. So that's the difference. It sounds like a paradox, but it's really not. When everyone can produce infinitely average content, the average becomes kind of worthless. Like everyone is Amazon basics at that point. The economic value moves to whatever average can't do. And what average can't do is specifically, weirdly, unmistakably human. So what stops my thumb now when I'm scrolling, whether it's in a genuine experience inside a partner or even on social, it's not production value. AI nails that. Like, great, cool. You know, you could take this whole episode, you can throw it up into a clipper and it'll give you decent stuff. That didn't create the magic of our conversation. If you consider it magical, I don't know. But either way, maybe this is average and this is the best I can do as a human. But I think what stops the thumb, to go back to that cliche from 5 years ago, is like a specific human notching a specific human thing and saying something about it that no algorithm would have said. Because generative content really only learns from the past, but we are creating the future. And that sounds very like ambitious, but that comes from lived experience. It comes with opinions that have been wrong and people who call us out on it, right? And the third is like weird specificity. Like that. What I just gave you was weird specificity. AI would not have come up with what I just said.
Yeah, because AI looks at the sum of the total information and it's kind of always a race to the middle.
Right. Which is why I love, I have podcasts, I have a blog. I'm very prolific, unfortunately for most, on LinkedIn. But when I see a typo or a grammatical error now, it's proof of humanity.
Yeah.
I did that. I put I instead of me, or you've without the apostrophe by accident, or there and there. Oh, I never mess up there and there. I won't do that. You're and your, I don't mess up either. But occasionally typos happen. Great. That's how it's believable for me.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome, man. Well, Matt, great to hang out with you and good to finally be able to get you onto the show. I love what you're building. It sounds super exciting and hope to see how it gets deployed.
We got to build we got to build a genuine community for your podcast.
Hey, let's go.
I will show you how to do it. It'll take you 5 minutes.
Let's do it. We'll take that. We'll take that as an action item leading out of the show.
The AI note taker taking notes in this, right? That's one of our key next steps.
Let's go. All right. If folks want to follow along with you, I know you got a podcast as well. You're a prolific writer. If people want to keep up with your thought leadership, where do you want to send people? And most importantly, if they want to connect and learn more about Genuin, where do you want to send folks?
Yeah, LinkedIn is still the hub, both personally and professionally for me right now. Whether it's the podcast that I do on my own, which is called Snarketing, where we talk to marketing, tech, agency leads, which is a lot of fun and snarketing, you get it. Or even our Genuine podcast. The Genuine content is, I think, as far as B2B content goes, really pretty impactful and significant. But we also eat our own dog food. We're creating our own content. We're actually embedding it into our partner sites, right? You can go see the Genuine Connections podcast clips in the iHeart app. Cool,
wow,
right?
That's cool. Yeah.
But LinkedIn is where every day you will find, whether it's a link to my podcast, my newsletter, a cold take on something that other people think is hot, or something hot that people think is cold. Right 50% of the time, which is why I don't get into betting.
I like those odds. All right. Well, Matt, thanks so much for spending some time with the audience on the show today. And for those at home, if this is the first time you're tuning in, don't forget to give us a like and a follow if you want to hear more exciting marketing conversations as we bring interesting thought leaders to you every single week. If you're listening to the show, a genuine review on whatever podcast platform you might be listening on is how we find a larger audience organically. And if you think there was a marketer out there, maybe a publisher, somebody who's sitting on a well of vertical video assets that are collecting dust after they've been posted, the algorithm maybe the algorithm didn't grab attention, or you got your moment of the sun and now it's just sitting there in the archive, and you want to figure out a cool way to service those videos to your consumers and your audience. definitely feel free to share the show with anybody who you think would be interested. So with that, Matt, I will wish you a great day, and I will see you at Cannes or somewhere on the road soon, I'm sure.
I look forward to it. Safe
All right.
travels.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.